Shut up and sit down.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Fight for Liberty show. Today we have a very special guest, a very old friend of mine, Mr. Jon Mahan. He is the host of Courageous Conversations on various streaming platforms, and he actually had me on a couple weeks ago. And so we're hoping to kind of continue a little bit of the conversation that we're having on his show, as well as get into a couple of other topics. So, Jon, thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, appreciate you having me on. This should be a fun conversation.
Yeah, I think of all of the people that I've ever interviewed on this show, you are by far my oldest friend.
Yeah, right?
We've known each other since, elementary school?
Yeah, my earliest memories of you, you're probably 5 or 6 or something, right?
Right.
About the same age. So yeah, real early.
Yeah, I was talking to my parents just before we started, or before I came back up here, and I said that I was interviewing you, and my dad was like, "Wait, the Jon Mahan we know?" And I was like, "Yeah." It's like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah.
So first thing that I wanted to ask you, because this is your first time on the show, and you do have a little bit of a different political belief system than maybe the majority of my guests. If you want to just kind of go over your basic idea of where you stand politically, and then we'll talk a little bit more about like how we got there.
Yeah. I don't identify strongly as anything, right?
Mhm.
There was a time when I would say I was definitely not a Democrat. I was definitely independent. In 2016, when Trump ran, I was like, okay, well, I guess this makes me a Democrat. So I guess I'm a Democrat now, but, just not really in love with the Democratic Party. So I don't know. I probably, will end up voting Democrat more in my life than anything else. But actually, I voted Libertarian before as well, not because I'm necessarily a huge fan of Libertarians, but because I'm a huge fan of a 3-party system, and they're our closest chance. So I'm willing to throw votes at them just to show to the world it can happen, people. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely right, kind of on the left side of things, the liberal side of things. I'm fairly progressive. My values stem down to, empathy and compassion, people over corporations and people over governments. And, my tribe of people who I consider my own that I need to protect is every human being on this planet, not just Americans, right? So again, that tends to drift me into those liberal progressive waters. But I don't identify strongly with anything, right? Like, seems like progressive is the best label for me, though.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the. I think globalism is an interesting topic that I've had a lot more conversations about lately, especially in a more like libertarian light, because a lot of people kind of have seen that as an oxymoron because they assume globalism means like a big global government. But there's a whole other side to it, which is, what you just said of, the people that I care about is everyone, not just the ones within this weird shaped little box that we live in. And I think that's pretty libertarian in its core because, we don't really believe in borders anyway. It's kind of hard to be a nationalist and a libertarian because borders are imaginary lines made up by governments that shouldn't exist, according to most libertarians.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And I also, so would you consider yourself that you were brought up fairly left as well? Or is that kind of a newer change
No,
for you?
definitely not. Like probably everyone in our circle growing up, right, was very conservative Christian environment. I don't know if my parents like they pretty much always voted Republican. They weren't
Mm,
like, in love with the Republican Party, but they were in love with their Christian values, right?
right.
And that led them to the conservative mindset and led them to vote Republican more often than not. So I was definitely raised to believe that conservatives were the good guys, right? It was like
Right.
conservative is good, conservative is the way you should be, conservative is right, liberal is bad, right? Has a
Mhm.
foul odor tied to it when you say the word liberal in my household growing up. And again, my parents weren't like, political fanatics. They weren't like demonizing liberals, but I definitely got that
Mhm.
sense as a kid. It's better to be a conservative than a liberal. And actually, like, as I went through high school and college, right? Part of the reason I claimed to be like, independent is because I just learned that liberal was bad, right? Like liberal wasn't something you wanted to be. And probably, honestly, I don't think it was until Trump that I finally got comfortable and said, you know what? Actually, yes. Yes, I'm liberal.
Mhm.
If that's the opposite of what that is, then yes, I will happily don that term. And since 2016, I've learned to get comfortable with the word liberal for myself, right?
Mhm.
But up until that point, I still thought of it as a bad word and, claimed status as independent accordingly.
Yeah. I definitely can identify there. I have like a few vague recollections of considering your family to be like a little bit more liberal than the rest of them, because you guys were the ones that like cared about theater and were good at it
Mhm.
actually, and read books that some of the other parents might have scoffed at, and you
Mm.
guys were definitely a little bit you seemed a little bit less sheltered than like maybe some of the other families within our homeschooling group. And
Probably, right. My dad's a big artist and always exposes to various art forms, including
mhm,
R-rated films. Right, we're allowed to watch those. At a certain
mhm.
age, of course. Then yeah, theater was a big part of our lives. So yeah, I'll bet you in our little community of homeschool conservative Christians, we probably were the more liberal and outlandish of the group for sure.
It's crazy when you put that Overton window on it, and like within this crazy right wing group, you guys are crazy leftists, and like
Yeah.
I know that there were people that thought similarly of my family, especially later on, because when Rebecca graduated, my family kind of stopped caring a lot about a lot of things. I was like 15 or I was 13. I was old enough to watch most movies and do most things and go
Mhm.
out and like stay home alone and whatever. So the like high school for me was a lot different than the rest of it. And my
Mm.
parents kind of watched Rebecca like go off and fuck up, like for lack of a better word. She got caught up in the party scene and everything like really quickly in college. And my parents saw me doing a lot of the same things she did in high school and were like, okay, he's probably going to do the same dumb shit. So
Interesting.
whatever. And they kind of, I don't want to say my parents gave up on me because that's not quite true, but like in a lot of ways, in some of the micromanaging things that
Yep.
they would
Yep.
have done, they did. And then I would go to like co-op, and you know I had a girlfriend at 16. I was flirting with other girls within the homeschooling group, and
So young.
like
So young to be flirt.
so terrible, you know. Um,
That's
and then to
interesting.
think, I mean, I would consider you to be the most successful homeschool flirter, considering the fact that you're married to the girl you were talking to at 13.
Oh, I don't know if that could be counting as a successful flirter. I think she flirted her way to me, and I was clueless for most of it. And when I finally realized what was going on, I just kind of went along with it. It's interesting, like, you know, Ray, my current wife, right? We started, flirting at least, when I was like 14 or something. And I keep thinking to myself, like, it's a damn good thing that all worked out for me because I don't think I have any game. Like, I think I would eternally be in the friend zone. I think that would just be my place. It's just eternal friend zone. So I kind of lucked out that it worked out so well that I didn't have to go through that because I don't know what I would have done.
There you go. I thought that I was going to have a similar situation, and then that did not happen, and I'm very thankful
Hmm.
for that. But uh, yeah, being single in mid 20s is fun sometimes, but
Sometimes.
sometimes. So one thing I did want to ask you, because I don't actually know now that you guys are out in Colorado, what do you do for work?
Sales. I've done software sales. Right now I'm doing sales for like an ad company who produces ads for some of the big advertisers on Facebook and stuff.
Oh, nice.
But it's just been sales for me the entire time. Like many people, I got a degree that I'll more than likely never use, right? My degree is in natural resource management, and got out of school and there wasn't any damn job. So I had to just take a sales job because I had done like some door-to-door sales like as a summer job in college. And I was like, well, here's one skill set I have. So that was my first job, and it was freaking awful. And like, I met someone who like owned a Verizon store and offered me a job working at his Verizon store, selling cell phones. Got into that, and that ended up being what I did for like 4 or 5 years, and I ended up doing like retail management and stuff like that for Verizon. And that was okay, but certainly nothing you want to do long term, right? So the first opportunity, I jumped into software sales, and again, now I'm more of the average ad sales stuff, but it's just kind of where I've ended up, not where I planned to be.
You're like a modern, technological savvy Don Draper.
I don't know who Don Draper is.
Oh,
what you should know about me, David, is whatever the reference is, unless it's like Lord of the Rings or maybe Star Wars, I'm not going to get the reference.
Fair enough.
Any movies, TV shows? Nope.
Don Draper is the main character of Mad Men, which is like my absolute favorite drama TV show. It's basically the only drama I'll watch, and it's about a early '60s through the mid '80s ad agency in New York City.
Yeah, the only reference I get, one of the only references I get is in, I think it's the first Captain America movie, when Captain America doesn't get anyone's reference and is always just awkwardly sitting there while everyone else is laughing, being like, "Hey guys, I don't get that reference." It's literally me all the time. So I'm a Captain America level ability to get references.
Maybe that's a good thing. I've actually been pondering that the last couple of weeks because I don't watch that much TV or movies lately. The last probably like 3 or 4 years because I have a life, and so I try to keep up with some things, and I do watch Netflix often and YouTube every once in a while, but there's so many things on my to watch list, and I've started contemplating the necessity of having that list. And like, do I actually need to watch any of this shit, or should I be out like accomplishing things, making the world a better place, like reading a book or listening to a podcast that actually matters about the things that I care about?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, if your desire is to easily make friends with people that you meet and that you work with, it's probably good to keep up on references, because my entire adult life has been marked with like still not fitting in with adults. Like you're supposed to, I always had this idea like after high school that would end, right? And of course it's not like high school level exclusion. Like, I certainly have friends and acquaintances, but just in general, I still have this sense of like, y'all are doing your thing and care about certain things, and I don't give a shit about that stuff. And I'm over here doing my thing about what I care about. You don't seem to give a shit about what I care about. So, we'll be nice to each other, but like, it doesn't seem like there's much of a grounds for further, not even grounds for starting a relationship. Right. So if you get references, if you watch sports, you're going to be in a much better place than I am when it comes to conversations with coworkers and relatives and stuff like that. Like, go over to a family dinner and the guys talk football and shit. And I'm like, okay, I watch the Super Bowl each year for the fun of it. Like, it's about it.
Yeah.
So I'll just...
I think I have like a good cursory knowledge of most of the popular sports in America, to where I can watch a game and understand what's going on, at least the sport level. Like, I don't know the players or the coaches or the backstories or like why this game is special, but like I get what's going on. I don't have to ask questions about like, wait, why was that a penalty? Except for like basketball is the only one that I'm still like don't quite get. But I don't follow sports at all anymore. This year I watched, I think 5, maybe 6 football games, and total. And that was because my parents had it on once I got home, and I stayed in California for a little bit, and I was staying at an Airbnb, and everybody there was big 49ers fans. And so I rooted for the 49ers for like the first 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I'm probably on the same footing, right? At least, the major sports, I know what's going on, right? And can keep up. Basketball, it's a little bit too fast paced for me to always know exactly what's going on.
There's just too many penalties. Basketball is just like way too babied at this point. And it's like, how is he just touched him? He like what?
I've also found sometimes we're watching a game and I'll suddenly realize after like 15 seconds that I'm watching the wrong part of the court and the ball has moved on and I'm like, oops, where's that ball?
I do that a lot more when I'm actually there. Growing up, my parents cared a little bit about sports, and so we went to like SU basketball games, and we had seasons tickets to the Oswego Lakers hockey team for a while, which was awesome. I loved
We
going to
went
the
to some of those
hockey
games too.
games.
They were always fun. Yeah.
Yeah, the Lakers, because they were like D3, but they were like they won the championship 4 years in a row, and that was like the 4 years that I was in high school, and it was just like the best. Like they just went back to back to back to back championships, just crushing everyone. They went like almost undefeated one of those years. It was just like a great time to be a fan of this team, even though it's like some random D3 college team that like no one in reality gives a shit about, but like we cared. Oswego was loving it.
Yeah, no, those games were fun. I always have found live sports to be very fun. My dad was a teacher at Hannibal, and we would go to those high school games from time to time. And again, don't give a shit about basketball. And of course, there's some tiny little podunk redneck, high school basketball game, but it was still fun to sit there and watch it all happen. So
yeah, I think the small town sports is significantly more fun. Like I've been to a bunch of Crunch games, and I've been to a bunch of Lakers games, and Lakers games significantly more fun, like exponentially more enjoyable, because like a small town, everybody knows each other. We sing Sweet Caroline and everyone's into it, and like there is no judgment, and it's just a great time. And you go to a Crunch game, there's just a whole bunch of drunk assholes all over the place, or like a Sabres game is the worst. I went to a Bills Patriots game once for my birthday, and I grew up as a Patriots fan. So that was super fun for me because we destroyed them, but the stands had almost emptied by the end of the game because the Bills were just losing so bad. And the people behind us were like threatening me. This was, mind you, my 13th birthday or so, I think, maybe 14th. And I had a little Patriots banner and a t-shirt on, and I was cheering for him. And there was like 6 grown-ass dudes behind me just like screaming at me the whole time. Like us just being mad that I cared about a different team than them. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to be a part of that culture. Like, that's why I stopped paying attention to sports. Like, I don't want to be in any form of a team sports mentality, whether that's in politics or actual sports. Like, it's just not fun. So I'm curious.
I've heard people talk about.
Oh.
I've heard people talk about, with COVID, a lot of people are losing interest in sports, and they're learning that they can live life without sports, and they're finding ways to fill those entertainment gaps other than sports. So the question is, when sports come back, is it going to come back just as strong as it was, or is it going to be seriously depreciated? And I personally am fine if it comes back weaker and people aren't watching it as much. Yeah. Wouldn't bother me at all.
I think the problem is that they replaced that entertainment with like talking about politics on Facebook.
Yeah,
and that wasn't healthy.
And now we're seeing those same 6 guys screaming at a 13-year-old, but now they're on Facebook.
Exactly, and only because they have a different banner than them. Like it's the same exact BS. So I'm curious because we talked about how we were both raised kind of or fairly conservative. You definitely moved more left than I did. In the adult years, but what kind of triggered that and started moving you towards like maybe what I have known all my life might not be the truth?
The first thing that allowed the motion was, getting an education at college, right? In particular for me, college was kind of the years. It was a long process. So right now I don't consider myself a Christian. I'm not necessarily against the idea of the fact that there's more to this universe than we can see and hear, but I just don't believe mankind really knows what it is, right? And that the Bible we were raised on necessarily has any better idea what it is than any other religion out there making a stab in the dark as to what this other thing might be. But in high school, I very much considered myself a Christian. When I got to college, I still very much consider myself a Christian. You know, as I started to learn the real science behind like evolution and the age of the earth and all these things, and I was like,
Mhm.
oh, so you mean like those straw man arguments that my Christian Science textbooks put up weren't actually what the science of evolution is. That kind of made me realize, okay, I'm a Christian, but now I'm opening the door towards not believing all the doctors, right? And I think I was already there, but I very much firmly solidified I'm a Christian, but like I'm totally okay with like gay people and and stuff like that. And there just kept being this list of like buts. Well, yes, I'm a Christian, but I don't agree with this, and I don't agree with this, and I don't agree with this, and I don't agree with this, right?
Mhm.
And eventually, the whole thing just started to fall apart, and it was like, okay, maybe I'm not a Christian, right? Maybe not. So then I was kind of, I don't even know what the word for it be. I definitely firmly believe there was more to this universe. There was some type of deity, but I wasn't sold on what type of deity it was, right?
Mhm.
Whatever that's called. Now I'm kind of in a place of probably agnostic is probably the word. I don't know if there's a deity, and I don't think we can know, and I don't care too much, right? Let's just live our lives on Earth and do the best we can. So once the religion piece started unraveling, that kind of set me free to really kind of explore this world of viewpoints and opinions and beliefs on my own terms,
Mhm.
without having these fences put up what was and wasn't allowed to believe. And again, I never like went on this quest to like become a liberal or find out if I was a liberal. It kept coming up that social issues would come up. I'd think about it, I'd learn about it, I'd read about it, and I'd say, okay, based on an intelligent analysis of the data and based on empathy and compassion and caring and humility, I think this. And
Mhm.
oh, look, that's what the Democrats and the liberals think. Okay, well, I agree with them. And that just kept
Right.
happening over and over again. I was like, okay, well, if I keep agreeing with these people over and over again, I guess I'm one of them, right?
Mhm.
So I think like again the humility and compassion piece was either always there or kind of developed before I either started questioning my political beliefs. Then once I got set free from Christianity and could explore things on my own terms, then that empathy and compassion and humility just consistently kept leading me to agree with the liberal side of things, right? It always felt to me like whenever an issue was brought up, my knee-jerk reaction that was built into me from a child of like principles and right and wrong and God, my knee-jerk reaction was always the conservative reaction.
Mhm.
And then I would think about it, and then I'd research it, and then I'd read up on it, and I'd think some more about it. And then suddenly my views would evolve, and I'd realize, no, actually, life isn't as simple as it seemed. There's more to this. And when you really account for the more to this, I changed my opinion. And that,
Mhm.
again, that just kept happening, kept happening, kept happening. And I said, okay, I guess I'm a liberal because I keep agreeing with these people over and over again.
Yeah, I think it was interesting for me because I started walking away from the GOP right before I started walking away from Christianity. And I kind of did an about face, came back to my faith in like 2019 for most of that year, and I've just kind of started walking away again. But because I saw Trump and I was like, well, he's not what I believe, clearly. Like I'm a conservative person. He's clearly not. You know, I and at that point in time, I didn't smoke yet, but I understood that weed was not as bad as everybody said it was. And I thought that it should be legalized. And I was like, okay, no party believes in guns and drugs. Like those are the two things that I believe in. Neither of these parties believe in that. And then I found Gary Johnson who believes in guns and drugs. And I was like, okay, all right, cool. Let's
You
see
said this
hear
was
more about this.
2016?
Yeah. Um
Okay.
yeah, that was the first election I voted in. I was out of state in college during the 2015 election, and it's not like anything important happened that year anyway. That was when I turned 18. So, yeah, 2016 was my first election, and watched the primaries, and I was like, okay, I don't agree with Bernie because I was still very fiscally conservative. I didn't agree with Hillary because she's literally the devil. And I didn't agree with Trump because he's like the fucking Joker from Batman or something. Like I did, and clearly doesn't believe anything that I do. He was bad on guns and drugs. Like he was bad on everything that I cared about. And then I found Johnson. And then I watched all of my Christian friends still support Trump once he got the nomination. And that's kind of what triggered me to start walking away from the faith because I was like, wait, what? Like, how do you, what? you think Trump is gonna return us to a moral Christian what from because Obama's so what terrible? Like, yes, Obama's an awful fucking human and like bombed the shit out of a bunch of people and like built the cages that everyone's pissed about and like all of this other stuff. Will never defend Obama, but if you're a Christian, like he's better than Trump.
Yeah, no, Christians going for Trump, like I
I
feel like
don't
that's
get it.
major evidence that like it's not really a faith thing, it's not really a God thing, it's not really a Jesus thing. There's something else going on there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're just using religion as your reason, and you're using abortion as your reason, and turning a blind eye to 99 other things just so you can look at that one thing. Like, there's something else going on here
And
beyond.
even that, he appointed 3 Supreme Court justices. All of them have said that they will never even look at overturning Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
So, like, that whole argument even is nothing. And yeah, so many of my friends like clung to that because, and I do understand the hatred for Hillary, and you know she's obviously not any more Christian, but I didn't get the like rabid following of Trump as Christians, that he was some like godsend that was gonna undo all of this terribleness, and I won't ever understand it. And you know, Gary Johnson, you know, he's not a Christian, but I would consider him to be a better like moral character than anyone else that has run for president in my lifetime. Really, he's a great human. He knows what he's talking about. He did an amazing job as the governor of New Mexico. Bill Weld was a decent governor of Massachusetts. Both parties liked them both. They were 2-term red governors in always blue states. You know, they had some shit. So I was like, okay, let's look at them. And that's when I started like actually starting to dismantle all of my beliefs one by one as I met other libertarians. They were like, okay, here's why open borders isn't a crazy idea. And I'm like, huh, okay. Yeah, sure. That's cool. Maybe we can do that. And then 3 years later, you know, I'm a fan of open borders, but it took a while. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with all political groups is that we all evolved into what we believe and then instantly expect other people to just believe what we believe because we had a conversation with them. It's like,
right.
No, that's not a thing. You know, I have a lot of friends that are huge on Medicare for all, and you know, I don't agree with that, but I understand it, and I understand the point of view, and it's not like a deal breaker for a political alliance, in my opinion.
Yeah, that is interesting, right? We do expect other people when we engage in conversation with them. We're expecting that they just drop their views and adopt ours, and when they don't, we say it's a lost cause. I can't help these people. And it's like, how did you get to where you were? Took 5 years? Okay, well, stop expecting it to take any less than 5 years for them, right? Stop expecting you to like DM your brother-in-law, send him a few articles, hit him with a few facts, and have him change his mind right there on the spot. Like, patience, damn it, patience.
Right. And I think those of us that come from a religious background have an advantage in this point of view because we were trained to be patient with stuff like this. We were trained that like you don't save people, God saves them, and you know it's just your job to plant the seed and hope that it sprouts, and you know maybe somebody else will actually reap the benefits. You know, you're so trained in that mentality that if you're able to actually bring that over to how you act in politics and do the same thing and understand that like I'm just going to sow a seed and maybe in 3 years there's a candidate running in his area that is a libertarian that he goes, oh well, I heard that thing once and it didn't sound crazy and that guy was nice to me and understood what I was saying, and so I'm going to go look at this candidate, and that candidate's kind of sane and is also a decent person, and then that guy's a huge supporter, donates $1,000. You know, maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't, but that's not our job. Like it's just our job to be nice and understanding and try to see other people's points of view, and then help them see ours, and maybe they change their mind.
Yeah. Plus, it seems like there really is no alternative, right? if you want someone's views to change and evolve, I think I can't think of a single example of someone being bullied and shamed and accused and insulted into realizing they were wrong, right?
Right.
So if you want someone to change their mind, it's either the only option I see is like patiently, kindly, empathetically engage them in conversation and hear about their views. And when the time is right, share your views and give them space. I don't like that it takes that long, right? So I'm very passionate about various social justice issues, but certainly racism. And when I talk to people who are, overtly or, subtly racist, I want them to change their views right away. Like, I want that. But I just realized that's not possible, right? It's just not how it works. So you either just like take a loss, vent some steam, call him a racist jackass, and sign off and block them, in which case you've accomplished nothing, or you plant a few seeds, you start a conversation, and you see where it goes, which is not very satisfying, but it's the best option we got, I feel, right?
Right. Yeah, I think I definitely fell into that trap with, there were deal breaker issues for me for a while, and racism was one of them. And then over the last couple of months, I've talked to a couple of people who have said some things that I would be like, oh, you're a fucking racist. And then I didn't do that thing, and I talked to them. And then I've talked to a couple other friends about like how we were raised. And like, I was raised to be kind of racist. Like, like my family was the kind of family that like locked the doors when we drove down South Solana Street in Syracuse because like it's the scary town. Like, I was raised to be scared of Black people and to distrust Mexican people, and like if all you see is like 90s Hollywood, like you're probably gonna be racist. There was like zero anything but white people in Fulton or Oswego when we were growing up, so I had no, like, my only introduction to any other ethnic group was like Chinese restaurants in Oswego. It and Aztecas, like that's it. So I know that other ethnic groups make good food. That's it. That's all I know. And then I moved to Brooklyn and, got slapped in the face with reality. And and I was like, okay, Black people are cool. And it's sad that I had to actually have that realization, but I did. And so expecting other people to not have to have that realization sometime in their life is hypocritical. You would hope that they would have it before they're 35, but especially if they live like in the Midwest, they could never have had the experience that I did, where like I lived in downtown Syracuse and I lived in Brooklyn and Manhattan and a couple other like very, very white minority areas. So it would be impossible for me to be like actively racist and be alive, because I couldn't like go grocery shopping or use a taxi or anything like that if I didn't want to associate with people that weren't white. But it's easy for people to do in this world, to just associate with their own culture.
And what's crazy to me is how quickly people on the left turn around and start like berating and being cruel to people whose shoes they were recently in, right? So 2020 is like, we saw lots of this, right? White people who know racism's wrong, but aren't really aware of how prevalent racism is and how damaging it is and how much racism they have within themselves, right? The summer's protests happen, George Floyd happens, we get woke and we learn about racism and we go, oh my God. And we get really passionate about this evil that we've just realized the severity of and realize our role in being complicit with, and immediately turn around on people who haven't had that realization yet and start demonizing them like we weren't just there 3 months ago, motherfucker. Like, really?
Right.
It's just crazy. Like, you, by your own admission, until 3 months ago, were equally as blind as this person. So why are you demonizing and attacking and insulting and berating this person who's in the same condition you were a year ago? Where's this ridiculous superiority complex coming from that you suddenly get to treat people like this, right? Just because you now have your eyes open and realize something that they haven't realized yet. Like, shouldn't you have all sorts of empathy and compassion for this person, having been there yourself? Somehow that disappears, right? People on the left, as much as I agree with their views and tend to get along with them because they agree with me, like, man, they do not handle themselves well as a group collectively, of course, speaking in general terms. They do not handle themselves well when people disagree with them. Like, they have this moral superiority of like, we are the only ones who are right and you're evil and dirty and awful and yucky and wicked, and we are morally superior to you. And it's like, dang, motherfucker, you were just there You spent 25 years of your life in the exact same place they're in. It's only been 2 years ago you got out of it. Why are you being so terrible to them? Where's the empathy? Where's the compassion? Like, and I could go on forever about the things we demonize people on the right for doing, and then we do the exact same fucking thing. It's just people on the right do it to gays, and we do it to people on the right. And somehow we think it's okay. But we're literally doing the exact same things we're accusing them of doing. We're just doing it to them, so it's okay. Like,
right. Yeah, and there's definitely even, specific groups within the right or the left that the left will demonize, which is exactly the same thing. Like, how I can't tell you how many times I've been cursed out for being white or for being a dude, or for wearing a suit, or for being a politician. While I was running for office, I marched with BLM and No New Jails and Decrim NY, and I was, very active in these groups in New York City because I believe these things. I care a lot about social justice. I care a lot about criminal justice reform. I care a lot about, decriminalizing sex work and legalizing marijuana and psychedelics. Like, those are things that I'm really passionate about. I'm passionate about the environment. So I'm with all of these heavy, self-described communist, leftist, far leftist, and I'm marching with them because I believe the same things they do. And then these same people are attacking me, saying that I have no right to even be there because I wouldn't know what it's like to go to Rikers Island. And it's like, actually I do. I was there. But you can lecture me that because I'm white, it was going to be different for me or something, that I didn't feel it as badly. Like, okay, yeah, sure. That's why I'm here, because I agree with that. Like, I agree that there's racism within our criminal justice system. That's why I'm here.
yeah.
And it's people don't want to have that conversation. That's the worst part.
So I've been having this connection between two patterns in my mind. And, I haven't had a chance to really thoroughly think it out. It's the first time I'm sharing it with anyone. So apologies if it doesn't come out too cleanly. But I mentioned again, people on the left have this sense of moral superiority, that if you disagree with us, you are inhuman, you are racist, you are bigoted, you are homophobic, xenophobic. We have all these words to describe people who disagree with us, right? And we are quick to dish out death and judgment to people online when they disagree with us, right? And again, claim this moral high ground. And from my perspective, many times the left position is actually morally high ground. I think I agree with that, but the behavior of people when they sense they have that moral high ground is just terrible. And it's drawing a connection for me between that and what I experienced growing up in a Christian household.
Yeah.
You have these policies, these rules, these beliefs of these are okay things to do and these are not okay things to do. And if you start doing the things that are not okay, you're ostracized, right? And we are all, as a culture, very familiar with Christianity doing that to people, and Christians cutting people off and treating people terribly because they don't live up to these, moral standards. And we know that's wrong, and we hate that, and we make movies that are, portray Christians terribly as the ones who are cutting off their own children and ruining relationships because these arbitrary moral beliefs aren't being lived up to, right? And we're kind of moving on as a society away from that, and you know what? Don't use your religion to be terrible to somebody. And in its place is coming this liberal belief system of what's right and what's okay. And if you fail to live up to these standards of liberal morality, we attack you and slap you and shame you and ostracize you the exact same damn way the church did to sinners in the past. Now it's liberals doing to, people who are racist or bigoted. So it's the same pattern of getting so caught up in morality and rightness and right and wrong that you no longer know a proper and effective way to engage with people who are not living up to those standards. And you end up creating more harm than good because you're so focused on what's right, So to me, it seems like a very similar pattern, just playing itself out with politics and liberal beliefs instead of religion and, biblical doctrines.
Yeah. And I've drawn the correlation on the show before of the same thing in foreign policy. The Crusades versus the war in the Middle East. It's the same fucking thing. It's those brown people over there don't believe the thing that I believe, so we're gonna go kill them until they believe what we believe. It used to be Christianity, now it's called democracy, but it's the same fucking thing. We're just blowing up brown people because they have a different code of conduct than we do, because they live halfway across the world and have different lives and different history and different shit going on. And it makes no sense. But I've never really thought about the exact same correlation within society. Yeah, people have moved on, like you said, I think from being able to weaponize religion. So now we just weaponize politics. Or now at the moment we're kind of doing both, but it's shifting. Eventually, I think people will move the rest of the way there.
Yeah, actually, like, it is eerily similar, right? This idea of you are so unclean, I can no longer have you in my life, right? People used to say that about their gay son. Now they're saying that about their, Trump supporting aunt, right? Same idea. You are so unclean, so below me, so morally depraved and reprehensible. I can no longer even stomach your presence. You do not deserve to be part of my circle. I'm cutting you off. It's the same goddamn behavior. It's just, again, instead of doing it for religious reasons, do it for political reasons. And that worries me, right? Like, a lot of terrible shit was done when people took religion too far. And, again, we're moving on from that as a society and as a world. That's great. But the void's just being filled by the religion of liberalism now. And we're like, damn it, people, this isn't fundamentally any different, right, than what we literally just fought about, right? Think about it. Like, how hardcore do liberals talk about how awful it is when Christian parents ostracize their gay children? Like, every liberal out there knows how deeply evil and awful that is. And we're following the exact same pattern. Now, to be fair, instead of following that pattern over something that someone has no control over, like whether or not they're gay or straight, we're following that pattern for something someone does have control over, who they support politically. So maybe it's a bit of an evolution. It's a little bit better, right? At least our reasons for ostracizing are maybe a little bit more logical, but it's the same damn behavior. The same behavior of cutting people off because they failed to meet your moral standards. Rather than trying to help them and pull them up and help them get them up to where you are, you're just cutting them off because they're not there. God damn it. People, why do people always do these things?
Yeah, and I think I would agree with you that that being gay is different than being a Republican. But to the people that were doing those awful things 20 years ago or even today, it's not, because most of those people don't believe that it's a choice. Or do believe that it's a choice. And I don't believe that. But you have to understand, people don't believe everything that you believe, and that's just life and the world. And if we all believe the same thing, the world would be super boring. No one would have any fun. Like, politics is enjoyable to me. Like having intellectual discourse with people is great. I love it. Like, getting to learn things about other people that I wouldn't have known or understood, getting to evolve as a human at a rapid pace, that's fun. That's awesome to me. And I don't understand the people that are like, no, I must stay this way forever because I have perfected me. Like, I will never perfect me, like, ever.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, right? As I've started the Courageous Conversations podcast, right? And, I'm still getting started, but even just the few conversations I've had with people who disagree with me, it is very interesting, right? And I think I come out of it more well-rounded, right? And empathetic, and probably my views are enhanced from having a little sprinkle of other people's views added in. And it gives me that tremendous freedom too. We're just me and my wife were just talking, like, there's a woman who watches our kid for us sometimes, and she seems really great. And every time we pick, our daughters up, we were like, my wife and her are like, oh, we should have coffee sometime. Oh, we should. And of course, like regular adults, we never do. We just keep saying it. But I brought up the idea of, well, hey, how about this? How about one of these nights, like, we go over there, you and the woman go out, have your coffee date, and me and the husband can stay at their house with the kids and kill time for a few hours while you guys go do your coffee, and we'll go play with the kids. And she's like, yeah, maybe, but I don't know about that. Her husband voted for Trump. I don't know if you'd want to hang out for him for a few hours. And, like, absolutely, there was a time in my life where I'd be like, ooh, that would be awkward. I don't know if I could get along with someone like that. But now, after having done these conversations, I'm like, well, who the fuck cares? I'll bet you we still have a ton of shit in common, right? like, I'm not scared to have conversations about politics to begin with. I'll happily wade in there and go sit down with a dad I don't know and watch our kids kill each other and talk about politics and drink some beers, right? But like, I also realize that even the people who oppose me, I probably have like 3/4 of our beliefs in common. It's just a quarter where we're different that causes the different outcomes, right?
Right.
Like, it's so freeing. I ran across someone on LinkedIn who was posting some conservative, from my perspective, nonsense. And I reached out to him and said, hey, do you want to come on my podcast and talk? And I'm excited at the prospect of talking to this guy who doesn't believe anything I believe, and from my perspective is totally clueless. And I'm actually looking forward to the conversation, right? So it is very freeing once you get past this idea of like, I can't do that. I can't talk about politics, right? It can be very fun.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting points of view to talk to is like people that were raised on the left and moved right, because that's kind of rare, or we consider it rare, but it's a lot more common than at least I thought it was. Because me and all of my friends grew up on the right, and then we all shifted left in different variations. But I don't know anyone that's as conservative as our parents. But I have a lot of friends now that are Republicans whose parents were hardcore Obama people. And that I find very interesting and enlightening, because the transition, we have a way of looking at it from our point of view as like, well, as I matured, I got more liberal. So clearly the liberal side of point of view is more mature.
I definitely thought that. Yep.
Right. And it's really interesting to hear people tell their life story of, as I matured, I got more conservative because I understood that these people care about like having a healthy family life, and being financially sound both in our home and as a government, and these people are less small or more small government, and I've seen government do stupid things in my lifetime. I came back from the war in Iraq and I was like, fuck this. And at the time the Republicans were kind of anti-war because Obama, and moved that way. And it's like, okay, that's a point of view that you don't really hear that often. And like I said, like we both grew up conservative, and I still consider myself fairly conservative in a lot of ways personally. And that's why I like the libertarian point of view, because I'm able to be like, you can be a gay single dad of 12 in a commune. I don't give a fuck. I want to have, I'm straight, but I do agree that that's not really necessarily choice, but I am. And, I want to have a wife and kids and live together and stay together. And, I don't like the idea of being a single parent. And, I want to have a like stable household and a good income and a good family life. And, I care about building a good nuclear family and a strong, healthy, like conservative family, but not hating the liberals. Like that's the only part that I want to exclude from how I was brought up.
Yeah.
So I think, we all go liberal in our 20s. And I think there definitely is another curve back when you hit your 30s or 40s, where you kind of come back towards the right a little bit in your own personal life, at least. And I haven't quite hit that yet, but I think I will soon.
It's interesting. You're right that I don't know many people. Actually, personally, I don't know a single person who started liberal and went right, and that does tend to create this sense of superiority of like, well, clearly it's the more mature position, right? Again, like I mentioned, in my experience, my knee-jerk reaction when I was maybe in my late teens in college and high school, my knee-jerk reaction was always a conservative viewpoint. My well thought out, well researched reaction was the liberal one. Right. And that really had an effect on how I viewed people who were conservative. Like, well, clearly they're just people who don't go past the knee-jerk reaction and shut their thinking off as soon as they have an idea pop in their head. Right. And I still feel that way sometimes, but probably not accurate or fair. Right. There's probably a much better explanation for why these people have conservative views. And that's the thing that I think is so important about talking. Right. When you don't talk to people who disagree with you, your mind is left to come up with its own theories to explain their views, explain their behavior, explain this stuff, right? And again, most liberal minds will say, okay, well, my best theory right now is he's a racist, bigoted asshole. That's got to be it. There's nothing else that can explain his behavior. Where when you have these real conversations, you actually realize, oh, okay, there's a different reason he came to this viewpoint other than being a racist, bigoted asshole, right?
Right.
Doesn't mean his views are correct, right? He could still totally be wrong, but
Mhm.
it gives you a better theory to explain them once you actually have these conversations.
Yeah, one of my absolute most hypocritical things I've ever done on Twitter. I posted a gotcha post that was literally intended to just piss people off. I was subtweeting a couple of friends that I was in a group chat with that I was arguing with, and all I said was, "Caring about the nuclear family does not make you alt-right."
Mm-hmm.
And to date, it is my most popular post I've ever posted on Twitter. I just broke 1,000 like a week ago, and this was a few weeks before that. It got like 2,500 likes and like 1,000 comments. It was ridiculous, and so many people calling me homophobic,
Yeah.
or like against adoption was another thing that a lot of people accused me of being. And it was just like all of these, like, because the alt-right says the word nuclear family every once in a while, everyone that says the word nuclear family must also be alt-right. And that was literally everyone's line of thinking. And they said that outright, like in the comments, like they're still there. They're It's not like they were hiding that. That was their actual line of reasoning, how they were coming to the conclusion. And in the comments were saying, oh, you think this person also said that and thought all of these things, and would like post articles written by alt-right people. And I'm like, I don't read that shit. I have better things to do with my life than read like alt-right dark web news articles.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think that that's what the nuclear family means. I consider the Webster definition, which is the parents and direct descendants. Like that's what it is. Like it's not even homophobic anymore. I think maybe like in the 90s, the dictionary might have said like the mother and father, but now it doesn't, because we've evolved as a society. And when you just make these snap decisions and these snap judgments, you limit any kind of reasoning. And then a lot of people were accusing me of making shit up, that the nuclear family isn't under attack, because that's a thing that a lot of people talk about. It's like, oh, the nuclear family's under attack. They First of all, they automatically assumed that I was saying that, which I wasn't, but I do believe that a little bit. And then they were saying that that's bullshit because it's not under attack. And I was like, look at the rest of the comments here. It clearly is. Like, I just got shat on for 6 hours straight for saying caring about the nuclear family is okay. It's clearly under attack. But you just demonize these people and don't understand their points of view. And then you're not going to listen to the actual, like, scientifically backed opinion that like two parents together in a household is better. That's a fact. And having a good relationship with those children is also better. Eating dinner together every night is statistically proven to create a better family life and healthier children, and those children go on to succeed better if you have a healthy family life. That's just facts. And if you just dismiss all of that, you're going to go to the opposite extreme and not give a fuck about the nuclear family, and you're gonna raise shitty kids, and you're gonna have a bad marriage, and you're gonna not have a good life because you're not building a support system around you. And
What I find
most
interesting about that What I find interesting about that is that like no one takes the time, because that statement is incredibly vague as to what you mean by that, right? There's
right
no way you can read that and know for a fact what this person means, what they're trying to get at, what do they mean when they say nuclear family, what do they mean when they say caring about, right? Like it's such a nebulous statement. It seems crazy to me that you would attack and demonize someone without saying, what do you mean by that, right? There are interpretations of that sentence that would get me riled up and upset, but there are interpretations of that sentence which I agree with. So really, you got to figure out how the person meant this, because again, and that happens all the time. Again, people have this theory pop in their mind to explain what someone just said, and they just run with that theory and say, okay, I now understand who this person is. It's like, come on, dude.
And the crazy thing is neither the people that agreed with me nor the people that disagreed with me asked me that question. Like maybe like 3 or 4 people out of the literal 1,000 comments and like 200 quote tweets asked me that question. It was all like, yeah, this dude gets it, or oh my God, this guy's an asshole. And nothing in between of like, hey, buddy, what do you mean by that? Because I was even getting libertarians that were shitting on me because they were assuming that I meant that I wanted to like pass some form of legislation that would enforce the like family values. I was like, no, I'm a libertarian. Clearly, I don't want to do that. Like, come on, you know me. Like, what the fuck, dude? Like, there's ways to care about the nuclear family and influence the people around you to do the same. And, you know, have a conversation with your brother. Be like, hey, I noticed that things aren't going so great between you and your wife. Like, do you want to talk about it? Like, care about the people around you and their families. That's not government. We can do it without government. That's the whole point of libertarianism, is we can have a healthy society without government. But people just snap decisions, snap judgments, and it was ridiculous. It was kind of fun though, and like I said, it was like the most hypocritical thing I've ever done on Twitter, because it was intended to kind of like a gotcha post, and I don't like doing that, and I try not to, but I did it that day, and it was fun. I got to spend a day just like arguing with people and being right 100% of the time, because clearly they were just arguing from a point of idiocy because they didn't even know what they were arguing, because they didn't know what I was arguing. So, you know, arguing with people about me being a white supremacist is easy, because I know I'm never going to lose that argument.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, thanks for the chat, man. I'm gonna go put my daughter in.
For sure. No problem. All right. Yeah. Thanks for coming back on. Before you go, do you want to just let people know how to find your show and give a little pitch?
Yeah, you know, so the pitch, the show itself, right, Courageous Conversations, is dedicated to being a place where people have these difficult, these awkward, these uncomfortable conversations, the type of which we've all kind of been trained to not talk about. A lot of this is like open disagreements, but it's not just that, right? There are other sorts of vulnerable, awkward, uncomfortable, taboo conversations that'll happen here. Because again, as individuals, we live more shallow lives when we don't have these conversations. As individuals, we're more susceptible to being sucked into our own echo chambers and not having well-rounded views. And unfortunately, as a society, when we don't have these conversations, we get this kind of ugly behavior we talked about, right? Where you're dehumanizing the other side, demonizing the other side. No one's working together. It's just a total mess. And it doesn't have to be, right? It really doesn't have to be. And, you know, there are a lot of people who say that, you know, the powers that be like it that way, right? Because God forbid, if we all ever united around things, a lot of shit would happen. Can you imagine if everyone, a little side, can you imagine if everyone on the left, right, and libertarian, like, actually united around the cause of getting motherfucking pedophiles in power locked up? We'd probably be able to do something really effective. But because there's so much division between us, we don't really work well together on things, right? Mm-hmm. There are so many things that I realize that like people on the left and right actually agree on. And it's like, well, damn, what would happen if we actually like work together on that shit? We can actually make some change fucking happen. Instead, we're just tearing each other apart on Twitter for the littlest things that we say. So anyways, it's dedicated to having those difficult conversations, awkward conversations, disagreements, etc. You'll get to watch me talking with people I disagree with. I'm even talking to other people too, though. So we can kind of make it almost a gathering place for these conversations, where some of the conversations won't even involve me. It'll be two other people disagreeing about topics. So at the very least, it'll be very entertaining, right? It'll be that type of conversation where you'll go, oh my God, I wonder what it'd be like if those two people talked. Well, guess what? You're going to get a chance to see what it's like when those two people talk on this show, right? So it's called Courageous Conversations. Unfortunately, if you search that on YouTube, you're not going to find it. There's so much shit out there that's more popular than mine by the title Courageous Conversations. Good luck. Honestly, your best bet's probably connect with me on LinkedIn. There's not a ton of Jonathan Mahans on LinkedIn. Not a ton of them are very active. Not a ton of them look like some, 25-year-old white guy. So Jonathan Mahan on LinkedIn. I post all my stuff there. I have links in my profile there. You might find me on Facebook too, but I'm less active there. So yeah, LinkedIn, Jonathan Mahan.
And I'll post a link to the YouTube channel in the description.
That'll be
video
helpful.
For sure. All right, John. Well, thanks again for coming on, and thanks guys for watching. We'll catch you next time.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to click the like and subscribe buttons below. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Fight for Liberty. and support the channel at patreon.com/fightforliberty. And as always, keep up the fight.